I'd like to have a little discussion and present a little bit about biological control of rootworm using BioControl nematodes. In the first slide here, I'd like to show the typical rootworm damage. This is chrome failure, resistant rootworms to chrome plus insecticide. This picture was taken in eastern Colorado in 2024. And then on the right are the same field, the portion of the field where biocontrol nematodes were applied in May 2024. These pictures were dug in July, and you can see the positive influence that biocontrol nematodes had on the rootworm resistant, chrome resistant rootworms. If we come a little further east and we look at Iowa, here's some pictures taken in 2023. Biocontrol nematodes were applied in May of 2023. This was a drought year. The roots were dug in July. You can see SmartStack only is really challenged with rootworm damage, obviously resistant rootworms. Aztec added, you get a little better root system, but still not a very good root system. Nematodes on top, applied in May, a much better root system. Here's another picture that's taken, 2025. You can see that this is SmartStack plus soil insecticide. The picture was taken in July of 2025. Nematodes were applied in May of 2025. This is Forest, Illinois. And you can see on the non-biocontrol nematode side, you can see that there's enough damage that the plants are beginning to lodge. Where on the side of the field where biocontrol nematodes were applied 3 months before, you can see a straight standing stalk and a much better root system. Here's another picture. This is Roswell, New Mexico. The roots here, this is SmartStack. It really challenged the event. And on the right side is SmartStack plus biocontrol nematodes. The difference between this and the previous pictures is the biocontrol nematodes were applied in 2019. The pictures were taken in 2023. That's 7 years of rootworm control from a single application. Across the Corn Belt, people are much more willing to admit that the BT traits are failing, regardless of seed brand, regardless of traits. And there is a new RNAi is on the market. However, Monsanto published a paper in 2018 that showed that rootworm resistance was developed in the lab in a mere 2 generations. The first planting in Iowa in 2021 showed damage. Continued reports in Iowa show in-field damage in 2024 and 2025. And the scientists have shown that there's a cross-resistance between RNAi traits. So Vorseed and SmartStack Pro are virtually identical. Here's actually a picture from Iowa. SmartStack Pro, the first year it was planted in the field, the pictures were taken July of 25. This is out of Ryan, Iowa, which is in northeastern Iowa. Nematodes were applied in May 2025, 3 months before, and you can see the big difference of root mass on the right. We can see there's a lot of damage occurring. On the left, a much better root system. Here's a drone picture of another field. This is in Newell, Iowa, which is north central Iowa. SmartStack Pro, no insecticide. This is the first year the field was planted to SmartStack Pro. The picture was taken in 2025, and look at all the down corn. You can see the down corn on the untreated side. Nematodes were actually applied the previous year in June of 2024 on this portion of the field. And you can see that there's a lot of straight standing corn. There was no pressure in 2024, high rain. So nematodes were applied 1 year before this picture. And here's actually roots dug from the field. On the right are from the damaged side of the field, and you can see that SmartStack Pro really wasn't resisting rootworm very much. There's severe damage. On the side of the field with BioControl nematodes, much more acceptable root system. So with all of the trait failure, we need another management tool in the toolbox. And so what we're talking about is BioControl nematodes. Now, BioControl nematodes, or entomopathogenic nematodes, are obligate parasites of insects. They're naturally occurring in the soil. The nematode species that we supply are naturally occurring throughout the Midwest, throughout the United States. They kill their host and reproduce within the cadavers. This is the insect host, and these are the nematodes that have emerged. And they get out and look for other insects. Biocontrol nematodes do not attack plants. We are all concerned about plant parasitic nematodes, but biocontrol nematodes only attack pest insects in the soil, and the persistent strains that we supply only need one application for multiple years of pest suppression. This technology was originally developed by my lab when I was at Cornell against alfalfa snout beetle. This insect only occurs in upstate New York, northern New York, kills alfalfa out in a single year. And in the course of that, developing the technology for snout beetle, we also ran and discovered the activity on corn rootworm. So what is the expected yield recovery? I have several examples here across the United States. Here's Paxton, Nebraska. The field obviously in 2019 had rootworm issues. You can see the gooseneck corn. 2020, the farmer had his field hailed out. He applied nematodes in 2021. Here's the stubble after harvest. Because he had no yield in 2020 due to hail, we had to go back to compare 2019 to 2021. The actual numerical difference was 17 bushels. The farmer felt comfortable saying that it was 12 bushels given the year-to-year variation of corn yields. The second year, the year after he applied, he went out and dug roots looking for rootworm damage. He found no larval feeding and noticed his beetle counts. The year of application was 2 to 3 per plant. The next year, the beetles had dropped to 0.5 to 1 per plant. And he has inoculated all 5 circles that he owns. Here's a second example. This one is Lamar, Nebraska. Half the pivot was applied. The lower half was applied with nematodes the 3rd week of May. The upper half was not applied with nematodes. The difference at harvest was 15 bushels. Here's the yield map. You can see the difference in the yield map. The lower half was yielded 15 bushels per acre more than the top. Come east to Iowa. This is Eldora, Iowa, central Iowa. The lower part of the field was applied with biocontrol nematodes in May of 2024. This is SmartStack with no soil insecticide. You can see the difference on the yield map. The farmer felt very comfortable with calling it 15 bushels and suggested it may be as high as a 20 bushel difference between the two. And you can see the difference. The blue is over 300 bushels. The red is below 200 bushels. If we did a return on investment for those Eldora acres, and we used the 15 bushel recovery, the grain value at today's prices of $4.20 a bushel is $63. If you extend that to the entire field, he got $8,190 increased value. The cost of the BioControl nematodes was $9,100, so he almost recovered on today's prices. If you raise this price to $4.30 a bushel, then he recovered the cost of the nematodes. In addition, in year 2, with Smart Stack, he could eliminate the soil insecticides. So that's a savings of $25 an acre. Many growers are seeing a reduction in adult control and continued use of the older traits assist with the economics. So what is the expected silage yield recovery? Well, corn silage yield is much more sensitive to rootworm loss than grain. So we have this older study in Roswell, New Mexico. In 2018, the farmer had a major failing BT event. His yield dropped from the expected 38 tons to 25 tons. He lost $62,000. We showed up and we applied BioControl nematodes. He in May of 2019, he left the insecticide there. His harvest was 38 tons. He had recovered those 13 tons. In 2020, we removed the insecticide. He just had the nematodes that were applied the previous year, 38 tons. 2021, 22, 23, 24, 38, 39 tons, and a single application of nematodes back in 2019. And in 2025, we have not yet had the yield results, but in chatting with the consultant that watches these fields, there was virtually no rootworm damage. If we do a return on investment for the Roswell acreage, you can see that we recovered 13 tons. If we value it at $40 a ton, that's a recovery of $520 an acre. If you look at across the entire 7 years, he has recovered $450,000, $58,000 from that single nematode application. His cost of applying nematodes was $8,800. In addition, he's saving money because he's not using a soil insecticide. He only has to treat for beetles based on scouting results every other year, and he's saving money planting an older trait. So how does that sort of ROI equate to the Midwest? Well, in the Midwest, we talk about a 28-ton typical yield. If we still value at $40 a ton, and a lot of growers use 10 times the corn grain price to value their silage. If we look at a nematode cost, a one-time application of $70 an acre, what we find is the typical yield recovery from nematodes is 8 to 10 acres, or 8 to 10 tons per acre, which is a recovery of $320 to $400 per acre. So at $40 a ton, a 2-ton per acre yield recovery pays for the cost of the BioControl nematode. A 2-ton per acre equates to an increase of plant size of just a mere 2.5 ounces per plant. So is there an economic impact to subeconomic rootworm damage? One of our customers grows 4,000 acres of continuous corn to feed his cattle. In 2024, he applied nematodes to 1,500 acres. He left 2,500 acres untreated. 2024 was a very wet year, so we saw minimal rootworm damage. He notified us and said his inoculated acres was 312 bushels per acre. His untreated was 296. He felt he left 16 bushels to the acre on the table. In 2025, he went ahead and treated an additional 1,500 acres and plans to finish off his farm this year. We go back to northwest Kansas. I was working with an agronomist out there. The farmer had treated half a pivot. On the side of the no nematodes, there was virtually no rootworm injury. So no ratable injury. The agronomist said, step back, look at the difference of root volume. So when BioControl nematodes were added, there was a distinct increase of root volume. He held these up, being an agronomist, and said, look at the difference of architecture. The nematode side had strong primary roots. The non-nematode side had a lot of brushy roots. He later, then working with an ag class, they went and did yield calculations in September, felt there was a 25 to 30 bushel difference between the two sides. The other interesting observation is the untreated ears were tipped and drying down. The treated ears were still green and hadn't tipped yet. So does this phenomenon carry over to the Midwest? Well, here's China, Illinois, Smart Stack plus soil insecticide. Nematodes were applied on May of 25. Pictures taken of July. And look at the difference. You can see on the non-nematode side, the plants are starting to tip over. You see a whole less primary roots. And on the nematode side, you see a much stronger primary root system, just like with the previous slide in Northwest Kansas. This picture is a yield map from central Iowa. The farmer, when he harvested it, said that there was obviously a higher yield in the area, but he didn't supply a number. But if you look at, you can see that there's more green within where they put nematodes. He thought it was in the 10 bushel range. And one often says, well, maybe he put the nematodes on the best part of the field. As you can see, the yield map, the previous year, he actually put nematodes on the worst part of the field. So what about multi-year persistence? We talk about a single application, multiple years of activity. We are following a field in Roswell that was applied in 2019. We just went back and resampled it in 2025. So this is 2,370 days after application. We still find BioControl nematodes in 31% or 1 out of every 3 soil samples. From experience, we know that positive rate shows that there's a moderate rootworm continuing infestation and control. That matches what the consultant tells us. The other interesting thing is you can see that the rate of nematodes is dropping over time. So when we first applied in 2019, there was a rip-roaring infestation, and it has so slowly brought it down under control. So what do we expect on the first year impact? We typically see a 6 to 15 bushel yield recovery, depending upon the severity of the rootworm. We see a 65 to 85% reduction in larval feeding, some reduction of beetles, 20, 30%, and that's the year of application, a May application. We talk about full activity in year 2, where we see a 95 to 100% reduction of rootworm feeding, major reduction of adults. And if you're using Smart Stack or Chrome, you can eliminate the soil insecticide, and many farmers are seeing a reduction in adult spraying. So how are they applied? In the non-irrigated Midwest, they are applied with your standard pesticide sprayer. Application rate is 50 gallons to the acre. And I know people groan about that, but I started the research years ago at 1,000 gallons an acre. 50 gallons is very usable. We need enough water in order to get the nematodes into the soil. All filters and screens need to be removed. This is inline filters. This is nozzle screens. We use a fertilizer stream nozzle. You can see that the narrow stream gives a concentrated band, and we want it applied late in the day because of UV sensitivity. And on the right here, you can see a typical application. It does not have to be over the row. it can be offset, which works fine. Nematodes move about 3 feet a year. If you're in the irrigated portions of the United States, the center pivot is a beautiful way to apply. We deliver nematodes. They need to be aerated. You can store them up to 28 days. All the screens and filters need to be removed. And typically the pivot is run at 100%, which gives a 1/4 inch of water, which is 6,700 gallons per acre. And it's just a beautifully even application. BioControl nematodes, we are delivered in a concentrated solution. 1 gallon treats 5 acres. We ask the farmer to have a rinsed out tote that he can store inside a building with reliable 110 power. We provide the air pump. The solution needs to be constantly aerated until it's applied. And there's a 28-day window in order to apply them. What sort of window? Anytime we get soil temperatures above 50 degrees, we can apply nematodes. This gives us our maximum first-year efficiency against rootworm. It's preferred by new customers or skeptics who want to see the maximum amount in year 1. Our customers who are treating additional acres, who know that it works, oftentimes select June to apply after the craziness of planting season is over. You get good establishment, but it reduces first-year efficacy against rootworm. Our irrigated customers who are applying to additional acres often prefer a Labor Day application late in the year through their irrigation system. There's 0 for year 1 efficacy because rootworm is long gone for the year, but you get increased efficacy the following year, and it's certainly less chaotic in September than it is in April, May. So where does this technology make sense? Only matched with a rootworm trait, even if the trait's failing. Because nematodes in this situation target the resistant rootworm survivors, and it becomes a very complementing technology to the traits. It extends the life of the traits. Growers don't have to use the latest traits. They can use the cheaper, earlier traits. It's not for use in organic corn for rootworm control or conventional corn. Where there's a window to use it in organic is if the farmer has a really strong rotation to where he's growing 1-year corn, he often has wireworm move in because of the cover crops, and nematodes then provide a good service to take out the wireworms. So how broadly adopted is this technology? Well, to date, we have 133,000 acres across the United States, nearly 58,000 acres on rootworm alone, 34,000 acres in Iowa, 10,000 in New York, 9,000 in eastern Colorado, western Nebraska, western Kansas, and 4,500 acres in New Mexico. And there's well over 75,000 acres that have been inoculated against alfalfa snout beetle, which this technology was developed initially for. The other important soil pest that nematodes manage is wireworm and your native white grubs. So what does this technology cost? Well, it's a one-time cost at $70 an acre, $68 for over 200 acres. We have an introductory offer to where you can get 50% off for your first 65 acres. So that's $35 an acre. The understanding is that you will treat half a field, so you get a good comparison, and we would like to see your yield maps to look at the difference. We also offer a financing plan through your John Deere multiple use account. If you're in the Midwest, Iowa, and surrounding states, Nick Steffens is your contact. Here is his information. Leave it there momentarily so you can copy it down. If you're outside of the Midwest, Keegan Shields will be your contact. and here's his information. You can always contact us through the webpage. And if you want to chat with me, send me an email, whatever, here is my contact information, and I'm happy to answer questions.